rejected for being too old to love again. She never imagined the right man would find her when she least expected it. The train exhaled a sharp hiss as it slowed to a crawl, steam rising in ghostly tendrils into the brisk Wyoming air. Selina May Whitaker descended from the last car, her gloved fingers clenching the worn handle of her battered carpet bag. She wore her finest blue dress, a high-necked garment trimmed with aging lace at the sleeves, dulled from years of careful laundering. The hem brushed against the dusty platform of Sagebrush Station unnoticed. Her gaze stayed fixed ahead, locked on the fragile future she had dared to believe in. In her pocket, she smoothed a folded letter with trembling hands, as if comfort could be found in its familiar creases. The letter had arrived 4 months earlier, penned by a man named Wade Garrett, a widowed rancher who had spoken of loneliness, household needs, and the desire for steady companionship. He had said he sought a wife. His words, tender and genuine, had stirred tears. She thought herself too old to shed at 52. Adjusting the brim of her travel-stained hat, Selina took stock of the town. It was a rough, unpolished place, 2 saloons, a weather-beaten church, a dry goods store with a sign hanging askew. Dust blanketed every surface. No one had come to meet her. As the train clattered and huffed its departure, Selina found herself stranded on the platform, the last passenger remaining. A group of young men loitered on the saloon porch, their murmurs and sidelong glances making her skin prickle uneasily. "Selina May Whitaker," a voice called from behind. She turned sharply, heart hammering against her ribs. There stood Wade Garrett, taller than she had envisioned, his face bronzed by sun, his sandy hair unruly under a wide-brimmed hat, a thick mustache curving at the edges. He wore a dusty duster coat, worn boots, and carried a revolver at his hip, a respectable figure at first glance. Yet when their eyes locked, a chill swept through her. His face twisted into a frown that deepened with every second. His eyes skimmed over her features, the graying hair tucked beneath her hat, the slight stoop of her shoulders she had tried so hard to disguise. "I thought you were younger," he said without inflection. Selina's lips parted. "You never asked my age." She managed. "Didn't think I had to," he muttered, flicking his gaze toward the letter she clutched. "Figured it was a misprint." Heat surged to her cheeks. "You wrote to me, Mr. Garrett. You said, 'I know what I wrote.'" His voice sharpened, his jaw setting hard. "Wasn't expecting someone old enough to be my ma." She swallowed against the sting rising in her throat. "You spoke of needing a companion, someone steady. I am both." He let out a short, dry chuckle. "Steady, maybe, but I was hoping for someone who could still give me sons. Not someone past that kind of life." The words struck her harder than any blow. Behind her, the boys at the saloon erupted in cruel laughter, one of them giving a low, mocking whistle. "Selina," Wade said, his voice final and stiff. "I'm not the sort to shame a lady, but I can't marry you. It wouldn't be right." "You already have," she whispered. "You've humiliated me." He tugged awkwardly at the brim of his hat. "I'll cover your train fare back east." "I sold everything to come here," she said tightly. "There's nothing left to go back to." But he had already turned away, leaving her standing alone on the dusty platform, the weight of every year she had lived pressing down on her shoulders like a heavy yoke. A voice jeered from the saloon porch. "Need a hand carrying that bag, ma'am?" followed by peals of laughter. Selina clutched her carpet bag tighter and marched off the platform, her spine rigid, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She had no idea where to go. By nightfall, her boots were caked with dust and hunger gnawed at her belly. She had eaten nothing since that morning's train ride. Wandering the outskirts of town, she searched for a quiet place to sit, to think, to figure out what came next. Her trunk, what few belongings she had left, was gone, taken, she assumed, while she had chased after Wade. Selina settled on the bank of a dry creek bed, staring into the endless horizon. The wind tugged at her hat and teased the loose wisps of silver blonde hair that framed her face. Somewhere in the distance, the eerie cries of coyotes pierced the fading light. Selina May Whitaker had worn many titles throughout her life: a wife once briefly, a mother, a seamstress, a caretaker for her ailing neighbors. But this bitter humiliation, this hollow loneliness was something unfamiliar. A lifetime of restraint, of doing what was expected, of sitting with hands neatly folded and head held high, had led her here to a cracked, dusty stretch of earth beneath a gathering storm, in a town that barely tolerated her. Perhaps she should have stayed behind, letting herself quietly disappear like so many forgotten women before her. A flash of lightning danced among the distant clouds, followed by a muted growl of thunder. Shelter was what she needed now. Her pride had already suffered enough. Rising stiffly, she started toward a faint glimmer of light flickering from a cabin beyond the last sagging fence post of Sagebrush Station. Yet before she could make it to the road, a voice drifted out from the shadows. "You lost, ma'am." She spun around, heart hammering in her chest. A man emerged from the darkness beneath a stand of cottonwoods, his horse's hooves muffled against the packed dirt. A lantern dangled from his saddle, painting him in uneven swaths of gold and shadow. He appeared to be in his mid-50s, tall and wiry, with a face worn by sun and time, and eyes that caught the light just enough to reveal their keenness. He wore a dark trail-worn coat, and a rifle rested easily across his saddle horn. "I don't take kindly to folks sneaking up on me, sir," she said, her voice steady, even as her stomach twisted with unease. "Didn't mean to," he replied in a voice calm and even. "Just saw you heading toward the gulch. Not safe after dark in these parts." "I've seen worse," she said, lifting her chin. "I reckon you have." He studied her another moment, then swung down from his horse. "Name's Sam McAllister. I got a cabin not too far off. There's food, a fire, a warm place to rest. Looks like you could use all three." She wavered, caught between pride and weariness. "I don't expect anything," he added, reading her hesitation. "Just offering a dry spot till the storm passes." She glanced up at the churning black clouds overhead. The wind had taken a sharp, cold bite, and deep down she knew she didn't have the strength to argue with kindness. "I suppose that would be all right," she said at last. "Thank you, Mr. McAllister." He nodded once and extended a hand to help her mount behind him. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. It was surprisingly warm and steady. They rode in silence, save for the wind hissing through the trees and the soft rhythmic pounding of hooves. The cabin came into view, just as the first heavy raindrops splattered against the earth, a modest shelter made of rough-hewn timber and weathered stone, warm light spilling from its oiled windows. Inside, the air was rich with the scent of wood smoke and rabbit stew. Selena's stomach clenched with hunger. "Sit yourself down," Sam said. "I'll fetch a blanket." She obeyed, sinking gratefully into a sturdy rocking chair near the fire. The heat wrapped around her, driving out the cold that had been gnawing at her since leaving the station. Sam handed her a steaming mug of coffee. "There's a quilt on the bed if you want it." She took a slow sip, the bitter warmth clearing the chill from her chest. "You ain't from around here?" he observed. "No," she replied. "I was supposed to be." Her voice faltered, but she pushed on. But the man changed his mind. He didn't press her for more. "I'm 52, she added almost defensively. "In case you were wondering, I wasn't," he said simply. The quiet honesty of it caught her off guard. "I'm sorry folks treated you badly," he added after a beat. "Too many around these parts reckon a woman's usefulness ends after 40. Sam offered a faint smile. "Some folks figured I stopped counting once I hit 30. He shrugged off his coat and hung it by the fire. "My wife passed 5 years back. Fever took her. Since then, it's just been me and the work. I understand that kind of silence." His gaze found hers, then truly saw her, and he gave a slow nod. Outside, thunder split the sky. Rain pummeled the roof above. Inside the small cabin, two strangers sat bathed in the soft flicker of firelight stitched together by loneliness and the brittle thread of dignity. Selena May Whitaker leaned back into her chair and exhaled long and deep. She hadn't found what she had come seeking, but something else. Someone had found her. And the storm was only just beginning. The fire crackled lazily in the stone hearth, the only sound filling the room beyond the heavy drumbeat of rain above. Selina sat wrapped tightly in a threadbare patchwork quilt, hands cradling a battered tin mug of coffee, now more cold than warm, yet she sipped it steadily, as though the simple act could tether her to the moment. Sam McAllister moved with a quiet precision, the practiced grace of a man long familiar with silence and solitude, yet not immune to their weight. He set another log onto the fire, nudging it carefully with the poker, his eyes averted. She noticed the shape of his shoulders, broad and worn, carrying burdens that no simple ranch life could explain. "I can help," she offered in a low voice, motioning toward the pot bubbling over the fire. "You've done plenty," he said, his back still to her. "Guests don't lift a finger the first night." His words were kind, but the firmness in them left no room for argument, and she settled back into her chair, drawing the quilt tighter around her. Outside, the storm gathered strength, howling through the gaps in the wood, beating against the roof with wild, reckless fury. Out here, the West never did anything halfway, not storms, not love, not sorrow. Sam returned carrying 2 bowls, steam rising from the hearty stew within redolent of rabbit potatoes and sage. She accepted hers with a grateful nod and spooned the first mouthful, surprised by its richness. Hunger made the flavors sharper, more real. She hadn't known how hollow she had been until that first bite filled her. For a while they ate without words, a silence that felt earned rather than strained, like an old blanket, patched and threadbare, but still offering warmth. "You were married," she said, after a time not asking but stating. "I was," he answered. 10 years. Her name was Hannah Strong as they come. Grew up on a ranch, smarter than I ever was. "What happened?" she asked. "The doctor said it was her lungs." "Came fast. Took her quicker than I could make sense of it." Selina nodded slowly. "I lost a child. Years back. A boy, barely 2 summers old. Got sick, and the world never quite looked right after that." Their eyes met across the low, burning fire, and something passed between them. Not shared circumstances, but a shared ache, the kind that burrows deep into bone. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I am too," she replied, her voice steady but low. Outside, the storm raged without mercy. Sam leaned forward, setting another log atop the fire, his movements steady despite the restless howl of the wind. "You got anyone waiting back east?" he asked. "No," she answered. "My sister passed last winter. My brother, he was kind until he wasn't. Needed something more than he gave. There's no one left." She took another spoonful of stew, swallowing before she added, "Just me now. Came all this way for a man who didn't have the backbone to keep his promises. I thought maybe life had given me another shot," she murmured. "I hoped maybe someone would actually notice me." "I see you," he said without hesitation. His voice carried no hint of romance, only the weight of truth. She kept her gaze on the fire, watching the golden and orange tongues flicker and dance like distant memories just out of reach. Her fingers, stiff from the cold, began to regain some feeling from the heat of the stew, but the deeper ache in her chest clung stubbornly, the ache of being deemed unworthy of daring to hope and being met with silent dismissal. Sam McAllister rose from his chair and started gathering the empty dishes. Selina May Whitaker stood too, reaching to assist, and this time, he let her. Side by side, they moved in a quiet rhythm. 2 souls long accustomed to solitude, surprised by how easy it was to share even the simplest task. As she dried the bowls, Selina let her eyes wander around the cabin. It was small but meticulously cared for. Tools were neatly arranged along one wall, a rifle mounted above the doorframe. A narrow bed was tucked into a corner. The quilt stretched tight across it with a sturdy trunk stationed at its foot. No photos adorned the walls, no knickknacks filled the shelves, just the bare necessities, and the man who kept them all in order. "You don't seem the type for clutter," she observed. "Never had the privilege." Sam replied with a faint, crooked grin. That grin stirred something unfamiliar in her chest. He wasn't handsome by any memory she had of youthful charm, but his face carried the rugged lines of wind, sun, and choices made the hard way. And in those lines, there was a gentleness she hadn't encountered in longer than she cared to admit. When the last dish was set aside, Sam poured her another cup of coffee and nodded toward the rocking chair. "You'll sleep better closer to the fire." "And you?" she asked. "Got another blanket? The floor's not so bad." "You'll wreck your back," she said. "Already wrecked," he replied with a chuckle that coaxed a smile from her, and he seemed quietly satisfied to have earned it. The storm outside lessened, the howling replaced by the occasional patter and distant low grumbles. Inside the cabin grew thicker with a simple growing comfort. Sam knelt by the trunk, pulling out a spare blanket and spread it out near the fire. Selina watched him, uncertain of the right words or actions. There were no rules for moments like this, no etiquette for two battered souls sharing warmth after a day that had tried its best to undo them. "Why didn't you ever marry again?" she asked softly. He stared into the flames, thoughtful before speaking. "Never found a reason strong enough to try, maybe until tonight." Her breath caught not because of flattery, but from the gravity of what he said. "Sam, I don't mean to scare you," he added quickly, turning to meet her gaze. "I just mean sometimes you meet someone and you know they've walked through the fire and they didn't get burned. They just learned how to carry the heat." "Faye." She had no reply. None was needed. His words weren't meant to dazzle. They were simply the truth. The wind sighed once more through the seams of the old wood, gentler. Now, the storm might have blown itself out, but Selina hadn't. She leaned back in the chair, tugging the quilt closer around her shoulders. The firelight threw shadows across the walls, shapes that danced like ghosts, finally set free, and somewhere deep inside her, a small spark of hope of something new began to flicker to life. "You'll stay a few days," Sam said, the tone of his voice more declaration than request. "I've got no other place to go," she answered just as quietly. "Then this is where you are," he affirmed. She nodded and closed her eyes, not in sleep, but in something closer to real rest, the first she had felt in what seemed forever. Suddenly a knock shattered the peace. Selina flinched, sitting up straight. Sam was already moving, rifle in hand, every muscle taut with readiness. The knock came again, harder this time, demanding Sam cross to the door with careful, silent steps, and lifted the latch. Standing in the threshold was a man drenched to the skin, his eyes wild and restless. He wasn't particularly young or old, a jagged scar cutting across his cheek, a revolver strapped tight to his side. Trouble radiated from him, clinging to his soaked clothes and following him into the doorway like a storm cloud refusing to pass. "Evening," the man said. "Name's Cal. Sorry to intrude. My horse busted its leg about a mile back. Been walking ever since. Near got drowned by the storm." Sam didn't lower the rifle. "You lost. Maybe just looking for a warm spot to dry out. I'll be on my way by sunrise." Selina moved quietly beside Sam, close enough to show silent solidarity, though she didn't touch him. She didn't trust the man either. His eyes skimmed over her with a measuring glance as if trying to figure her out. "You traveling solo?" Cal asked, a half-formed grin playing at his lips. "She's with me," Sam said sharply. Selina met Cal's stare head-on, steady and unafraid. She didn't need anyone to defend her, but it was strangely reassuring to hear someone claim her, even if just for safety's sake. Sam stepped back and cracked the door open halfway. "You can stay tonight. Just the floor. Try anything funny, and I'll put you down." Cal lifted his hands, mocking surrender. "Wouldn't think of it." Once inside the cabin felt tighter, the walls closer. Selina stayed by the fire, reclaiming her spot. She watched as Sam tossed a blanket toward Cal, kept the rifle within easy reach, and settled himself firmly between her and their guest. Without another word, Cal stretched out near the doorway, but Selena noticed that his eyes stayed slightly open, alert and listening. The air grew heavier, but not with the comfort of the fire, with something sharper, more dangerous. The storm outside had passed, but a new one had just entered. Much later, when the fire had burned down to low embers and the cabin grew quiet, Selena whispered, "You think he's trouble?" Sam didn't open his eyes. "I know he is." "What should we do?" she breathed. "We'll handle it." He replied simply. That was enough. The quilt draped over her shoulders now felt less like comfort and more like a suit of armor. The cabin didn't seem like a haven anymore. It felt like a battlefield lit by fire and guarded by silence, but fear no longer held her. Morning seeped into Sagebrush Station, slow and pale, dragging with it the smell of wet dirt and dying ash. Selena stirred, first the remnants of the fire barely offering any warmth, blinking away the remnants of sleep. She sat up the quilt, sliding off her shoulders. Her eyes drifted toward the door. Cal still lay there, wrapped in the spare blanket, but something was off. His breathing was too measured, too deliberate. She rose slowly, the wooden floor creaking gently beneath her bare feet. Her gaze found Sam already awake, sitting in a worn chair near the rough-hewn table, a battered tin cup of black coffee cradled between his hands. His rifle rested against the wall within easy reach. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, everything necessary was said. The danger hadn't passed. Selena moved to the stove, setting a pot to warm more water. Her hands moved on instinct, but her mind whirled. Cal's story didn't sit right. His arrival, his questions, even the way he scanned the room. It all felt too rehearsed. Men like him didn't wander up to cabins just because they were unlucky. Cal finally stirred, groaning and stretching like he'd just woken from a deep sleep. "Mornin'," he rasped, his voice rough from the chill. "Appreciate you taking me in. Folks around these parts ain't always so friendly." Sam said nothing, just watched him with the steady focus of a predator. Selena poured a cup of coffee and handed it to Cal without a word. He took it with an oily, crooked grin. "You two married?" he asked between sips. "No," Sam said flatly. "Could have fooled me." Cal said, eyeing Selena a moment too long. "You look after each other like you've been together a good while." Selena didn't blink. "We look after ourselves." Sam's voice was cold and clear, like water from a mountain stream. "What brings you this deep out here, Cal? Told your horse broke a leg." Sam's expression didn't change. Funny storm was bad, sure, but it didn't hit all at once. Took a while to build. Only a fool would ride straight into it knowing there's no shelter for miles. Cal placed his cup down slowly and deliberately. "You calling me a fool?" Sam didn't flinch. "Just wondering why a man with no pack, no saddle, and a clean shirt comes limping into cabins asking for shelter." The cabin went still. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Cal's smile didn't vanish, but it sharpened thin and tense. "You sure do have a suspicious mind, McAllister." "Experience does that to a man," Sam said coolly. Selena May Whitaker shifted subtly, positioning herself between the stove and the cabinet where Sam McAllister kept his sidearm. She wasn't sure what was about to unfold, but her body had already braced for it. The tension in her back dissolved. Her fingers curled inward, poised to react. "I ain't looking for trouble," Cal said. "Just needed somewhere to hole up for the night. I'll be moving along soon as I'm done eating." Sam rose slowly, every movement deliberate, and poured himself another cup of coffee. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "You told us your horse broke its leg." Cal's grin wavered. Sam continued. "There aren't any new tracks outside. No sign of any horse." Selena kept her eyes fixed as Cal's fingers crept closer to the blanket lying beside him. She edged half a step closer to the cabinet. Then it happened. Cal lunged not for the coffee, not for the door, but straight for Sam's rifle. But Sam had anticipated it. His hand caught the rifle's stock just before Cal's fingers could reach the barrel. The two men grappled fiercely, the chair scraping loudly across the floor as they fought for dominance. Selena didn't scream. She didn't freeze. She threw open the cabinet, pulled out a small revolver, and cocked it. "Let go!" she commanded, her voice firm as iron. Cal froze, chest heaving, his grip still locked around the rifle. His eyes darted to the revolver pointed directly at his chest. "I said let go!" Selena repeated, her voice steady. After a moment's hesitation, Cal slowly unclenched his fingers. Sam stepped back, lifting the rifle and aiming it squarely at the intruder. Selena kept her aim steady. "You don't look like much," Cal sneered, giving her a disdainful glance. "An old woman with a gun." "You don't look like much either," she shot back coolly. "Yet here we are." Sam gave a sharp nod toward the door. "Get out now." "I got nowhere to go." "That's not our concern," Selena snapped. "You came in here lying, that's plenty." Cal paused, weighing his options. Something in their faces, something hard and immovable, must have registered because he cursed under his breath and moved toward the door. "If I ever see you again," Sam warned, "I won't be waiting for you to make the first move." Cal exited without another word, the door banging shut behind him. Selena didn't lower her gun until the sound of his footsteps had faded into the wet morning stillness. Only then did she exhale and place the revolver carefully on the table. Sam watched her with a long, unreadable look. "You handled that just fine." "I've dealt with worse," she answered. He poured her a fresh cup of coffee and set it in front of her. "You've got more backbone than most men I've known." She accepted the cup with a small nod of thanks. 50 years of being treated like I'm fragile will do that to a woman." Sam sat down. They shared a companionable silence, sipping their coffee and listening as the world outside slowly settled back into calm. Later, after finishing a silent breakfast, they stepped outside together. The rain had stopped, leaving the sky low and gray, and the land appeared freshly scrubbed as if the tension had been washed away along with the dust. The tracks Cal left behind were faint and scattered. He hadn't gone far. Selena noted the direction, then turned to Sam. "You think he'll be back?" Sam nodded. "If not today, then sometime soon." "Then we better be ready," she said. "I've got a shotgun, 2 rifles, a needle, and boiling water." That drew a sharp, surprised laugh from him, a short bark that cracked through the lingering tension. They returned indoors. After lunch, Selena rolled up her sleeves and helped mend a broken fence post. Her hands raw and blistered by the time they finished. Sam watched her not out of doubt, but with a quiet, deep respect. She never once asked for a break, never once asked for help. She simply did what needed to be done. By evening, the cabin didn't just feel like a shelter anymore. It felt fortified, not through its walls or weapons, but through the way the two of them now moved together instinctively, without needing to speak. Over dinner, Sam finally broke the silence. "There's a dance in town on Saturday." Selena lifted an eyebrow. "You dance?" "Not well," he admitted. "But I thought maybe we could go. Give the town something to chatter about." "You're not worried what folks'll say?" she asked. "They'll say I brought the finest woman in 3 counties," he replied without hesitation. A slow smile tugged at Selena's lips. "I'll think about it," she said. He gave a small nod, not pushing her further. Yet something tender and persistent stirred in her chest, a quiet warmth she couldn't ignore. Later that evening, while drying the last of the dishes, Sam McAllister spoke again. "You know Wade Garrett's nothing but a coward," he said. "Cowards always use rules as their shield. Too old, too tied down by rules," he added. "Too poor, too plain. Men like that make excuses so they don't have to confess they're scared of women with fire in their souls." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You're not just strong, Selena May. You're fearless." She glanced at him, soap suds dripping from her fingertips. "No," she said softly. "I'm scared stiff. I just move through it anyway. That's what makes the difference." Their eyes locked. The air between them thickened, the moment stretching, until Sam took a step closer. "I'd like to court you proper," he said, "if you'll have me." Selena. May studied him carefully for a long beat. "I'm no girl," she said at last. I'm not looking to be sweet-talked like one. I'm not looking for a girl, he replied. I want a woman who knows her worth and doesn't forget it. She wiped her hands on a worn cloth, then said with a small, almost daring smile, Then I guess you can start with a dance this Saturday. He beamed, but the lightness was short-lived. A sharp knock sounded at the door. Sam was already reaching for the rifle resting nearby. Selina May seized her revolver and crept to the door, easing it open cautiously. It wasn't Cal. Standing there was Wade Garrett. He was tidier than she remembered, wearing cleaner clothes, though he looked jittery. Selina, he began, voice tight with nerves. I came to apologize. She stood firm, not moving aside. I was wrong, he said. I judged you unfairly. I didn't realize what kind of woman you are. No, she answered coolly. You realized just fine. You just didn't like it. He swallowed, voice shaking. I want to set things right. I brought a license. I have witnesses waiting in Sagebrush Station. If you come back, I'll marry you. Behind her, Sam remained utterly still. Selina. May gripped the doorframe, staring at Wade for a long, weighty moment. Then she smiled, but there was no kindness in it. You turned your back on me, she said quietly, made a fool of me in front of the whole town, called me too old to be a wife. And now that another man sees me suddenly, I'm worth the trouble. I made a mistake, he said quickly. No, she said. You just didn't think anyone else would. She stepped back and closed the door firmly. The latch clicked home with finality. Sam arched an eyebrow. Didn't see that coming today, he remarked. I did. She said, her voice steady. Men like Wade always come crawling back when they realize you're not waiting around anymore. She turned back to the dishes, humming low under her breath. Sam stayed leaning against the doorway, his gaze resting on her. Between them, something strong and enduring had taken root. Her dignity had not only been defended, it had been restored. Above Sagebrush Station, the sky melted into watercolors of violet and rose, the last hues of dusk draping the town in a soft, glowing hush. From the rise at the edge of town, Selina May could see the chapel steeple catching the final amber light, casting long, slanting shadows over the dirt streets and battered rooftops. She stood beside Sam, her hands clasped tightly at her waist, the fringe of her shawl dancing in the evening breeze. They hadn't spoken much since Wade's unwelcome visit 2 nights ago. There was no need. The quiet between them now carried weight, rich with shared understanding. From the community hall down below, music floated up to them, the faint sounds of fiddles and laughter carried by the wind. The dance had begun. You sure about this? Sam asked, pushing his hat back enough for her to see the doubt lining his brow. No, she answered with a half smile. But I'm doing it anyway. He offered his arm. She slipped hers through his. Their steps crunched over gravel, the only sounds their boots and the whisper of wind through the scrub. As they neared the hall, lively voices and bursts of laughter spilled through the open doors. Selina May's stomach fluttered. Years of being ignored and dismissed didn't vanish overnight. Still, she lifted her chin. Inside the hall buzzed with life. Couples spun across the rough wooden floor, fiddles and banjos stitching melodies into the night. Candlelight flickered along the walls, casting a golden glow over the room. The air smelled of sweat, whiskey, and sawdust. And just as they crossed the threshold, every head turned toward them. Selina May Whitaker, dressed in a simple lilac gown with her silver-streaked hair pinned neatly, walked in beside Sam McAllister. The room seemed to halt, if only for a moment, but long enough for her to sense it deep in her chest, the same burning humiliation she once felt standing alone on that train platform. But tonight, she did not falter. She held her head high, meeting each gaze steadily until they dropped theirs first. Sam gave polite nods to those he recognized and guided her carefully through the crowd. Murmurs stirred behind them like dust clinging to worn boots, but Selina paid them no mind. Dance with me, Sam said softly. She hesitated. "I haven't danced in years," she murmured. "Neither have I. We'll make a mess of it." She let out a small, reluctant laugh. "Persistent. That's what you are, Sam McAllister. And I see it now. I see you." "I won't run." She placed her hand in his. Their first movements were clumsy missteps and awkward turns out of rhythm, yet laughter found them quickly, and if their bodies struggled, their hearts danced effortlessly. A soft warmth bloomed within her. They danced once more, then again until the stares faded into the background. The whispers grew faint. Slowly, people turned their attention elsewhere. A few even offered smiles. Selena left the floor breathless. Her face lit with a smile she hadn't worn in so long. Her cheeks ached with the unfamiliar strain. Her heart thudded wildly, untamed and alive. Stepping out onto the porch, she inhaled the coolness of the night. Overhead stars began to shimmer against the deepening indigo sky. She leaned her weight against one of the porch posts, closing her eyes to savor the moment. Then a voice sliced through the stillness. "You really picked him." Her eyes snapped open. Wade Garrett stood just beyond the edge of the lantern's glow. Arms folded, his expression tight with disbelief. "I didn't pick him," she said quietly. "He chose me just as I am. No apologies." Wade stepped closer. "I came back. I tried to fix things." "You came back," she said, voice steady, "because you realized someone else wanted me, not because you did." His jaw tightened. "You embarrassed me. Everyone in town saw it. And you humiliated me in front of complete strangers," she replied, moving toward him. "The difference," she continued, "is that I healed." Wade shook his head, frustration thick in his voice. "He's old. He has nothing. I have land, a house. I could have given you everything." "No," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "You would have taken everything from me. My pride, my spirit, my soul. Just for the hollow promise of your name beside mine on a deed." "You're making the biggest mistake of your life," he spat. Selena stepped into the glow of the lantern, her eyes fierce. "No, my mistake was ever believing your letter meant anything at all." Behind her, the door creaked open. Sam appeared, his face unreadable but his body rigid with tension. "Is everything okay?" he asked, voice low. Selena did not break eye contact with Wade. "Just finishing old business," she said calmly. Wade turned his sneer toward Sam. "You think it's over? You think people won't remember she's twice as old as the girls you could have had?" Sam's voice came steady and sure. "I never wanted a girl. I wanted a woman who wouldn't crumble when life turned hard." Wade scoffed, his laugh bitter. "You'll regret it." Selena's voice rang out, cutting through the thick air. "Leave." For a moment, Wade stared at her, something dark flashing across his face. Then, without warning, he lunged. A flash of steel caught the lantern's light as he swung. Sam moved instinctively, stepping between her and the blade. Selena screamed, her hand flying to the revolver at her waist. Sam had insisted she carry it tonight just to be safe. But before Selena May's fingers could even wrap around the handle, Sam drove his fist into Wade Garrett's face. The knife clattered to the porch floor. Wade reeled back, blood streaming from his nose, stunned and breathless. Sam stayed silent. He didn't have to say a word. He simply leveled the revolver at Wade, his eyes steady and cold. "Pick that up," he said, "and it'll be the last thing you ever do." Wade swayed on his feet, glanced between them, and understanding he no longer held any sway here, stumbled off into the night. Quietness fell once again over the porch. Inside, the music kept playing, unaware of the drama outside. Selena. May exhaled a shaky breath. Her hands quivered slightly. Sam turned toward her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, her voice catching. "Just furious." He stepped closer, brushing his fingers tenderly against her cheek. "You were incredible," he murmured. She let out a laugh, small and breathy, softening into something tender. "I'm sorry he ruined the dance. He didn't ruin anything, Sam said, his voice firm. He revealed something. What's that? She asked. That your value has never been determined by men like him. His words sank deep into her heart, touching the parts long buried under years of disappointment and sorrow. And from those hidden places, something bright and new emerged. I was scared, she confessed. Scared that no one would ever truly see me again. Sam smiled gently. I saw you the first moment I found you standing in the rain, he said. A woman who traveled all this way for love and didn't shatter when it let her down. He slipped his hand into his coat pocket and pulled out a small object, a velvet ribbon worn and frayed along the edges. This belonged to my wife, he said quietly. She wore it tied around her wrist every day after we were married. After she passed, I kept it thinking I might never give it to anyone else. Selena, May gazed at it, breath-hitching. I want you to have it, he said, offering it to her with steady hands. She accepted it, her fingers moving with reverence. Sam wasn't asking for her history. He was offering her a future. I'm not what most men are looking for, she whispered, almost ashamed. I'm not most men, he answered, his voice unwavering. And you're everything I didn't even realize my heart was missing. Her voice trembled. This is real. He reached for her hand and pressed it against his chest. Feel that, he said. It's yours. She leaned into him, then resting her forehead against his, letting the peace wrap around them like the soft hush after a storm. New beginnings didn't always announce themselves with trumpets and fanfare. Sometimes they started quietly on a lantern-lit porch with the past finally released and a man standing not in front of you, but beside you. Later that evening, as they walked together beneath a sea of stars, Selena May thought back to all the fears that had once chained her heart, being too old, too late, too invisible, and she smiled. She hadn't been too old. She had just been waiting for someone who truly saw her. So, if you've ever felt tossed aside, overlooked, or left behind, remember this. Some stories don't begin to blossom until late spring, but when they do, their beauty shines even brighter. If this story stirred something in your heart, we invite you to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you believe in second chances, in late blooming dreams, and in the kind of love that grows stronger with every storm weathered, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who might need a little reminder that hope has no expiration date. Thank you for being here, and until next time, keep believing in the beauty of your own story.